First race can't come soon enough. I can say with certainty that we all feel this way. 4 teams will have a chance at plenty of wins and possibly the drivers and constructors in 2025. Ferrari's SF25, Red Bull's RB21, McLaren's MCL something, they always change it up and love to give a different name every year, and the Mercedes W16 all have new advancements and big news surrounding these 2025 cars. Let's go over the 4 teams and which team is looking best for our crazy 2025 season. In the meantime, go ahead and subscribe. We're getting very close to that crazy 100K milestone, and I would love your guys' help. It would mean the world to me. Let's get started with the Red Bull team. I've picked up a lot of news and rumors and speculation from plenty of sources to actually make this video and evaluate the changes on these 2025 cars and really where each team's focus is going into this ultra competitive 2025 season. As for Red Bull, they probably have one of the biggest challenges for this season, as it's going to be very tough to make a car that's going to work everywhere because they used to have that. 2024 definitely exposed a lot of weaknesses in their setup, and overall the car's performance from track to track varying a lot more than it did in 2023. Now, they recently passed their crash test on the front wing. It's supposed to be a new front wing with a lot more flexibility. They did not introduce that in 2024, and the actual flexibility rules that were kind of implemented in 2023 will not be changed. So every team will be allowed to have a certain amount of flex. We saw McLaren abuse this, we saw Mercedes use this, and Ferrari by the end of the season. So Red Bull is finally going to implement that in their front wing because they're going to need a lot of race pace. It's being said that somewhere between 7 to 8 tenths is what they need to find to actually be a top contender on every single track and really get them back in rhythm, because the car was very behind in race pace. Sometimes they were up at the top fighting with McLaren, depending on the track, but then other times, like in Monza, they were 8 tenths off, which is a very big variance to a very unstable car. It was not good over the curbs. Shockingly, it had a decent Singapore, so they have found something in the slow speed corners, which was a problem in 2023. And as Adrian Newey has recently talked about the car, he has mentioned that they were finding these problems in 23. The car was becoming a lot more unstable, hence why we saw so many performance issues with Checo, but Max was able to get on top of it. But these problems became so apparent as McLaren made its big jump in 24. With Adrian Newey leaving, he didn't have any input on the rest of the season, and that stable platform was gone. So there will be a complete redesign to the underfloor. They did find something in Vegas when they added a couple of pieces to the floor for stabilization, but then in Abu Dhabi, they were also behind both Ferrari and McLaren in race pace, so there's still plenty of work to be done. It's going to be a big winter for Red Bull, and this is what we've heard from them so far. Looking at McLaren, the team that's probably favorites going into 2025 with both Lando and Oscar Piastri. The teammate pairing is already great. As long as Oscar can work upon his race pace a little bit more, he's pretty much there, and this teammate pairing is, if not the best, probably right after Lewis and Charles. So when it comes to a team, they're pretty much there, but the actual car itself was the best, but the team has committed to taking very brave risks on this car going to 25 season to hopefully accomplish finally a driver's championship. This will be a evolution to the 2024 car, and when they say brave risks, we've heard McLaren use this word very often in 24, whether it be brave or ambitious or just a big change in general. It's predominantly been put into the underfloor. That is what is the big focus for these cars as of currently, because the regulations aren't changing much in 25. And whenever an upgrade like that was brought, or during the winter, that's when teams most struggle to get on top of their car. It's under that floor. That's what really changes the philosophy of the car, how it's going to perform from track to track, what type of setup they go for. And Adrian Newey has also talked about that the actual setup of a car cannot be changed too much. Yes, there is some driver preference being done there, but predominantly you go with the car's characteristics, and then the driver with his input puts in a couple of things to see whether or not the car will be a little bit more drivable to his driving style. But other than that, it's really reliant on the car. It's not really the driver that's making a huge difference in the setup. So we got to see if this brave risk pays off. I still believe them to be the favorite car as it worked on every single track. If there was a weakness, it was a little bit of that drag. They did have that weird DRS effectiveness that they were using in Baku, but obviously that is now banned. and there is no way of making something like that. Mercedes, probably the underdogs of the top four, but the team with the most speculation and rumors really surrounding it from what's possibly going to be the most unique car in 2025, at least from what we're hearing. They're hiding a lot of design details. For a long time, they were saying that the car wasn't even going to be shown up until pre-testing, and we are going to see it 2 days before pre-testing on the 24th. And right now, the rumors surrounding this car is there will be a new innovation like the front wing that we saw in 2024, and that would be quite surprising to me, and I'm not sure how much I believe what's being said about this. Now, that innovation on the front wing was brought in to bring in more airflow to the actual underfloor of the car to give it more downforce in the biggest focal point of these regulation cars. And while it didn't really give them the magic they wanted, I think it's also to do with really these cars being reliant on a bit of this flexi front wing. It does help them a lot in certain corners, and we can see a lot of teams abusing this tactic. So while the innovation was extremely unique and cool to see, it didn't really do the work that Mercedes was hoping it would. George Russell and the team has talked about race pace being an issue. He even mentioned that qualifying he was in top form, which I fully believe as well. He was much better than that of Lewis Hamilton, and he was really on it. He had a couple of pole positions in a car that definitely wasn't the top running car in a lot of these races that he did have pole position. But clearly that tire warm-up issue was really bad, especially when Lewis was there. But even George Russell has mentioned that as on hot tracks, their tires were getting chewed up, and by the time they got to Sector 3, it was pretty much over, especially for Lewis. On any track you put him on, Sector 3 was the biggest problem because the car was too hot because of that late braking style, which hopefully Ferrari can actually fix this solution because Ferrari has a bit of the same problem, but in a different way. And Mercedes is putting a lot of focus in their race pace. Now, in 22, they had a fast race pace car. In 23, they had a fast race pace car. In 24, it's a bit of both, but mainly qualifying. So they're really not on top of these regulations like they were in the previous ones. We'll have to see now with this new lineup. I don't really believe Kimi is going to be that big of a threat to most of these drivers' champions in the first season. But hey, maybe he proves us all wrong. And the last team, obviously the one that probably most of you have wanted to hear about, is Ferrari. Now, they've done a great marketing campaign around Lewis. Definitely has me hyped up, and I think a lot of people are really intrigued to see what he can do in his first season. And while he recently has crashed the car in testing, that's really not anything to be looked into, to be honest. He's done that in his previous cars and still had amazing seasons right after that, so I think it's more of finding that limit. There's not really too much to be talked about. There's not really even footage of this. Now, out of the 4 teams, Ferrari has said to be the car that's changing the most going into 2025. We already know the suspension has been confirmed to be changed from that push rod to that pull rod, which is a big and significant change for the team. They have to get on top of that right as the season starts. And these recent tests that they've had in Barcelona with the SF23 is to help with tire warm-up and really the longevity of the tire in the race. Now, in 24, that SF24 was very solid at preserving the tire and giving them a lot of life by the end of the GP. Helped out Leclerc in Monza, but there was still work to be done, as this is a very important key to these cars working very well, both in qualifying and in the race. The warm-up was a big issue in 23. In 22, they warmed the tires up way too quickly, so it's clear that there has to be a balance struck to be able to have both and benefit in both the race and qualifying. There should be a big improvement to the rear stability of the car as these side pods are being pushed back, and there will be more floor space open to work upon this area to add more airflow going to the rear of the car for stability and less drag, but the car was always pretty quick in these straights. A redesign to the underfloor is also set to be done, as the team did test the floor in both Qatar and in Las Vegas. And with that data that they had in Qatar and Vegas, they're going to make a floor redesigned completely to help in all these areas that I've mentioned before. It's going to be a big year for these cars, and we will see big changes in this winter because every team has a chance at winning. It's so close. These regulations stay the same, and for teams like McLaren, it's a year of pretty much desperation to win. In 26, it's going to be up in the air. Who's to say they're going to have the fastest car? It's a completely different set of regulations. Mercedes is very good on their engine, and it could be a big engine formula. So it's going to be a big start to the season. I'm super excited. We're in that last push, finally, about 2 weeks till we see an official 2025 car. But this is everything that we have upon it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.